Rishi Sunak has welcomed the decision to develop the UK's biggest untapped oil field. But environmental campaigners, well, they're predictably furious, aren't they? The Rosebank oil field is 80 miles off the coast of Shetland. It's said to contain up to 350 million barrels of oil. Green Party MP Caroline Lucas says today's news is morally obscene, and her party has described it as a climate crime. So, was giving approval to the Rosebank project the right decision? To debate this, I am joined by senior meteorologist at British Weather Services, Jim Dale, and the director of the Global Warming Policy Foundation, Benny Pease. Benny, thank you very much, both of you. Benny, I'll start with you. Is it morally obscene?
Well, I wouldn't use that kind of language. It's a decision of political realism. It's clear that the UK will need oil and gas for decades to come. Even the Climate Change Committee has acknowledged that much. So the only question is whether we use domestic oil and gas or whether we import it from other parts of the world. And there is a more general rollback of a lot of net zero utopian plans in play. We've seen Rishi Sunak rolling back, delaying a few net zero targets and plans already. And this doesn't surprise anyone. That was on the cards for some time. So it's not really surprising. And as we go into winter and energy prices are likely to rise again, people will be asking, why are we not using more of our domestic
Well, exactly.
resources?
Look, exactly. And we talk about things being morally obscene. Jim, you know, look, I would argue maybe it's morally obscene to just keep importing all of this stuff from overseas and hold the British public to ransom. If there's a massive emergency in America, we might be screwed. It might be a problem for us to keep relying on things like Saudi oil. Obviously, we've seen what's been going on in Ukraine. Is it not actually morally the right thing to do to have our own security by drilling for our own stuff?
Yeah, I take your point, Patrick, and there is an argument and a debate to be had, which we're partly having. I'm a meteorologist. You've known me for some time now. You know where I stand on this. See, I don't necessarily look at this from an economic point of view. I know the economy has to be taken factored into the equation. That's for sure. But I look at other things as a meteorologist, talking to climatologists, looking around the world, and even now, in the last couple of days, looking at all three major land masses in the southern hemisphere breaking heat records, much the same happened in the summertime in the northern hemisphere. That's my focus. And what this does, this is another decision by the Prime Minister to roll backwards as far as trying to fix that, if you like, into the future. So it's, to me, this is a wholly negative move. It's not one that will help the legally binding net zero commitment that this government has made, and now once again rowing backwards on it. So, you know, how does that help this situation? I do not know. And when we come to economic versus climate catastrophes, I know which one comes out on top as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, what about you, Benny? I mean, what Jim's saying there is it's a wholly negative decision. I mean, is it wholly negative, do you think? Because we would argue some of the positives are that we're going to be self-sufficient.
Well, look, there is a huge divide between people who are mainly focused on the climate issue and people who are focused on the economic and social stability of countries around the world. If governments really believe that we're facing a climate emergency, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. The British government isn't alone in rolling back net zero. We've seen the same in Germany, in France, in Sweden, in Italy, and never mind India and China, who are burning coal as if there is no tomorrow. So the reality is almost all governments in the world are not actually accepting or believing that we're in a climate emergency, because they're not behaving as if we're in a climate emergency.
It's an interesting point, that, Benny. Look, it's an interesting point, and I will put that to you, Jim. I know where you are on this. You know, you're a meteorologist, and I get that, but it took days, or maybe even day, actually, for Emmanuel Macron to start echoing what Rishi Sunak said. It was almost like Emmanuel Macron was waiting for somebody else to stick their head above the parapet, and then all of a sudden world leaders start going, well, actually, you know, there's a lot of climate alarmism out there. I mean, I would say they'd be the ones doing the alarming, to be honest with you, but there's a lot of climate alarmism out there. So actually, you know, this is just it's going to be a common theme, isn't it?
Yeah, look, you're talking about politicians, and politicians have to do a bit of this
juggling. For our friends on radio, that was some juggling.
Going to go in. To me, as I say, I come from one side of the equation, and I look at the disasters going forward. And to be honest with you, not just myself, Deloitte, the city firm, they say that if we don't get hold of the climate change situation, that the damage that will be done to the economies in the future will be infinitesimal.
Can we do both, Jim? Just can we do both? Can we simultaneously drill this whopping great big oil field at the bottom of the North Sea, right, and also invest loads in green energy, and so we can be self-sufficient, and we can also do things like offsetting, and we can use solar, and we can invest in wind farms? I mean, does it have to be one or the other?
Do you know what? In the end, as a realist in these things, probably, arguably, that will be the direction of travel. That in somehow there'll be smudge lines on both sides. I just hope and you know, suggest that if we can ramp up the green energy side, those things that we talked about in the past, on many occasions, then there will be no need necessary for these new oil fields. And I know one of the political parties is saying this will be the last one, even though they've given a green light to this. Hopefully, it will be the last. But I stress the green side of things. I stress the reasons why that it will destroy economies into the future. Never mind.
I get it. Final word, Benny, to you on this. I think it's interesting that Labour's policy, as I understand it, unless it's changed, is no new oil and gas, right? But it doesn't mean they'd reverse this. So actually, they'd probably be banging in favour. And I think that is interesting. It reminds me a little bit about what happened in Australia when a political party there decided to turn the boats back, and everyone condemned it. But then when they came into power, they didn't reverse that policy, because that policy already existed. So that was a good thing. So they'll reap the benefits of it. Again, I come back to it. You know, is it that much of an emergency?
No, of course not. And Labour will U-turn on this if push comes to shove and the energy crisis deepens. Labour will throw the sink at it and will, of course, go probably even for fracking if it has to save the economy. So, no, there is no party that will destroy the economy over the climate issue.
Well, it depends. It depends. You know, if the Labour Party resorts into some kind of Marxist mode, you know, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Maybe they will be happy for us all. Who knows? I am, of course, only joking. Right, both of you, thank you very much. Look, great stuff. That's Jim Dale, there, senior meteorologist at British Weather Services. Jim Dale, and the director of the Global Warming Policy Foundation, Benny Pizer.